Today I look at the firmware update process for a Samsung 960 EVO drive that I have. So it disappears sometimes after reboots, and I have videos that have demonstrated that behavior. The data's not going, you just need to power off by unplugging the motherboard, or remotely turning off power on the motherboard, something like this power strip I have, where I just unplug and plug it back in for about 15 seconds, and then the drive becomes visible again. You can boot Windows or VMware, VMFS file system on there, or Windows NTFS file system. They're fine once you get the drive visible again to the system. But at a BIOS level, it just disappears after soft reboots sometimes. So what's the fix? Well, I went to Samsung's download page. I Googled for Samsung 960 firmware, found this, and downloaded the ISO. Just before recording the video, there it is. I already have it on the hard drive. Here's the README file that goes with it. Now I'm going to dive right in and give it a try while you watch. So we've got IPMI out-of-band access to my ESXi server, which is powered off right now. Why am I saying VMware ESXi? Well, it's not Windows. You're not going to be updating the firmware from Samsung Magician from inside a VM. You need to have Windows 10 installed on the machine, but maybe you don't want to. Maybe you only run VMware or some other operating system. And the Windows utility is not going to do any good. So you really want the ISO to boot from that ISO and firmware flash from there. That's what I'm going to attempt today. Now, instead of requiring you to fiddle with Java, let's do the new remote control through HTML5. That's available if you have a later IPMI version, recent. Not all Supermicro systems have the HTML5 interface coming to them. But let me just show you that quickly. So if you're thinking about doing this or you're watching this video and you don't know what I'm talking about exactly, there, if you have a Xeon D and have BIOS 1.1c and IPMI 346, you're good to go. You're going to have this HTML5 interface that allows you to remotely control from there, including power on. So now I'm powering on the system. I jumped the gun a little bit because I haven't even done an ISO mount yet. So let me show you how to do the ISO mount. So I got to power back off. Okay, the ISO mount has been covered in detail in another video. But basically you go to virtual media, CD-ROM image, and I have a network share all good to go here. The only thing that needs to change is the file name. Okay, the only thing that needs to change is that file name. Yep. So let me get this. I don't really need those JNLP files anymore. But I do need the Samsung ISO file in my clipboard. So if I swipe my mouse across the whole thing, say copy, hit escape there. So I pretend I was going to rename the file, and I got the whole file name in my clipboard. Just paste it right there. Okay, so now it's going to mount that. So save the config, mount it, and we should see the word mount. There's an ISO file, it'll mount it. All right, now I can turn the VM on. And where was I with HTML5? Right here. Power it on. And we're going to see the Supermicro Super Server boot from this ISO that we mounted. Eventually, you should be able to just mount an ISO right from within this user interface with the drop-down menu, point to the ISO, and be done. But for now, you're stuck with a kind of Windows-y workaround to a network share. And there's an article right here. I wasn't kidding when I said I've already documented how to do that step by step. How to set up the network share all the way through successfully booting from this device that you're temporarily mounted so that your remote super server that's hooked up with a gigabit cable or to the IPMI port on the back of the server dedicated to management like this. Has nothing to do with what the VMs use or what Windows uses when you have an operating system installed on there. This is just for management, this IPMI interface. And I need to get ready and stop talking for a moment and click on my mouse in the window to make sure the HTML5 UI has focus, and then hit F11 to invoke the boot menu. Why? Because I want to pick an alternate boot device, right? I'm going to be booting from this virtual CD-ROM over the network. And it didn't work. Huh. I don't know why. Well, I might know why. So if we have a look here, the directions say, if you're reading this, is you need to get unet bootin freeware software for creating bootable USB. So maybe there's something about this process that's going to make it bootable, and then you stick a USB key in the server. I don't know. I might have to go that route. But I'm still going to try a little harder before I give up. So how about I give up on HTML5 for now and unmount here, just in case that's the reason. And we'll go to traditional remote control through Java. And I'll mount the ISO from there and see if I do any better. Probably not. It's a long shot. So I've powered off the machine. Now I'm going to go to virtual media, virtual storage, browse my way to an ISO. And plug it in. So that my ISO is definitely now mounted. Power this back on. And try again. I hit F11, it says invoking boot menu, and it doesn't show. Alright, so that confirms that my fate is to actually follow this. So I'm going to need to do that. Kind of interesting that I can't even scrape my mouse on that, but it does bring it up. Alright. So we got to download the Windows version of this utility. Back arrow my way to the directions. And it's telling me what to do. So launch it. And then just follow along. So on a local machine that has USB ports near me, I need to grab a USB boot device, USB drive that I don't mind nuking. So I'm looking for one now. We actually have a fresh one still in the wrapper, so opening that up. So what we're going to do here is just follow along and physically insert a USB drive, but I'll leave the camera recording so you can see the whole process through IPMI. So I failed to get this to work remotely. Alright, so USB drive might have some sort of SanDisk utility on there. There you go, you may have just heard that. Okay, select the ISO. Samsung ISO selected. What drive letter? It's not going to show. I got to run it again. Why? Because I inserted the drive after. So let's do it again. I think Rufus shows it dynamically, but this one doesn't. Oh well. Okay, that's better. Drive E, right? So that's the USB drive I just installed. Disk image. So it looks like we're good. It's just basically saying pay attention to what you're doing. Screenshot looks a little different, and they're doing screenshots under Linux or Windows, excuse me. Click OK, and then restart the. Okay, so that's going to work. Should work. It's creating the USB drive very quickly. Exit the utility, but you know, being the curious type, don't you have to look at it, right? So it's E drive, and it left the SanDisk junk on there. So that's a little sloppy, but whatever. So the old two directories here are from SanDisk. I don't like that very much. So, I want to reformat that and show you again because I want to know what's actually on there when you do this. So let's do a quick format. Alright, it's 32 gig. USB is a decent name for it. Now I've done a quick format and we're ready for running the utility again. New net bootin'. Point to the same Samsung ISO. Make sure it's on drive E. And at the top, I'm just curious what's in here. Don't need to worry about any of that, is what this set of screenshots is telling me because they didn't change it and they don't even mention it. So click OK. Files are down. And go back to the E drive and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's a Linux distro. All right, now I'm using the eject icon from the tray. And the drive's ready for me to eject. Pausing the video and I'm going to go install this in the server. Be right back. Oh, before I do that, hang on. See, what other options do you have, right? Virtual media. Notice you can't, there's no mount local media there. You can plug that one out. Okay, HD image. So E colon is not showing. So let's give that another try. Let's close that. So instead of physically installing the USB drive in, I'm going to try the quick and dirty lazy procedure, which involves not moving from my chair when I'm recording this, and see if I can get that local USB mounted. And that E drive just does not want to show. So I'm thinking on this Java interface, I really did kill it and start it again, and it's just not picking it up. All right. Maybe something about the format of the USB drive. Oh no, I already ejected it logically. Hang on. That could do it. Oops. So let's go to this PC. Yes, there's no E drive. So click the eject button. Shove it back in. We get our E drive back. And now we're good. Go back to the console, which I killed. Open that up again. So now, virtual storage. Sorry for the confusion in all the windows. Hopefully you're following this. There's the E drive. Plug it in, and it is not valid. So it's a no-go. So I'm still stuck with physically plugging in the server after all. Okay, logically eject it from Windows. All right, one of those. See if closing IPMI helps. Just curious who grabbed it, right? That was it. Killed Java. Didn't make a tone, but it's available for me to eject now. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm back. When a speaker is installed in the system, you get a little beep when you stick in USB media. So another reason that USB tends to be handy. Let's see if that USB device I just stuck in already shows up. Just quit BIOS without setting. It's going into Windows. All right. So we want to boot off the USB media we just inserted. I just inserted. Okay, I'm ready with the F11 key. Invoking boot menu immediately came up. And SanDisk. Now if that fails, because it's expecting DOS mode, which it did, got a little more work to do. Got to go into BIOS, put it in dual mode or legacy mode, and that'll get media created like this. It's expecting an old Linux or DOS. You're not going to boot in UEFI mode, so here's the quick fix. Well, it's not that quick because it takes a minute every time you got to make a change to the BIOS. Okay, I need to enter setup and go right here. Dual's fine, or even just legacy. That'll limit the number of devices that show. F4 and exit. Now Windows on the NVMe drive has no chance of booting. It probably won't even be seen. We lost display for quite a little while there. All right, so now do I need to hit F11 to choose the boot device? I'm not sure. It'll probably boot this USB media since it's the only thing it should find. But I'm going to go ahead and hit it anyway. All right, I don't remember the Samsung directions for booting from this ISO saying anything about doing anything at the boot, so let's just let it finish booting Linux. All right, there we go. Press any key. And it did not find the SSD. That's disappointing, but not surprising. Why? Because I rebooted the machine a number of times, and that's exactly what makes the SSD disappear, as my article here talks about. So I'm going to remove power from the system for 15 seconds. And of course, that killed my remote control session. And I'm going to try again. It's a little frustrating, but that makes sense. It can't find the device at a very hardware-ish level. Doesn't matter what operating system's on there. That's the known bug that we're trying to fix with this firmware update. All right, so I've powered it back up. It's going to take a minute for IPMI to become responsive again because the whole system was de-energized. The motherboard had no power. That's the whole point. I just effectively removed the power cord by unplugging the port number that this power strip is plugged in. So that kept me from having to, physically run down and look at the server. But yeah. So if you're watching this video and you're trying to follow along, yeah, you'd want to physically pull the power cord. So I have this power strip that lets me do that remotely. This white thing here. Okay, so this is going to fail until we give it more time to log in. And more time for IPMI process, or IPMI processor for that little management motherboard, that little management chipset, I should say, at the corner of the motherboard, for that to be booted, to have its web server running for you to log in IPMI. Takes, I think, about a minute after pushing the power cord back into the back of the server. So I'm back in. Machine's probably booting right up because it's set to power up when I plug the power cord back in. And I guess I'll hit F11. So when I'm done with this firmware upgrade, which hopefully works this time, I will need to go back in the BIOS and put UEFI mode back on so I get back to Windows. All right, so now Linux should start coming up. And then hopefully the utility works. So let me reduce clutter, reduce distractions. So now this video is focused on showing you what updating from the ISO from Samsung looks like when you own a Samsung 960 product. EVO or Pro. Pro is a different firmware level though, or a different firmware version. But the procedure should look the same. So now I'm hitting spacebar. It found the drive. Yay. Press any key to continue. Say yes. This is looking nice and easy. I want to make sure I can grab screenshots from this. So give me a second. I want to improve the video quality. There we go. Do I want to continue with the firmware update? Yes. Helps if I have mouse focus in the right window. Okay, so I said yes, and now we wait for this little Linux on USB operating system to finish doing its thing. I don't know if it succeeded. Okay. Push any key to exit. Press any key to restart the system. All right. Hopefully the disappearance problem is gone. And the fact that we're doing a soft reboot, well, normally that would trigger the drive disappearing. So if the drive is still there after reboot, that's a pretty good sign. But I think what I'll want to do is just boot from that ISO again to have it tell us there's nothing to do because you already have the right firmware on here. Now, am I supposed to remove power from the motherboard at this point? It would probably tell me that, but I don't want to assume anything, so I'm going to go and look at the README. Which says what? Restart the computer. It doesn't talk about removing the power cord or anything like that. But then again, this is the company that doesn't seem to have acknowledged in a README anywhere that they had disappearing drive problems either. So I don't know how much faith I put in that on the left there. Okay, so I'm hitting F11 to boot into that ISO one more time. Come on. And instead of waiting 10 seconds, I'm just going to hit enter. All right. So what versions are we talking about here? 2B QCX E7 appears to fix it. So this is probably going to say something like, you don't need to do that. You're already there. It's already at this level. There you go. So success, which is good. All right. I'll do another reset while that reboot's happening. We know we have to go into the BIOS to change it, right? I know I have to go to the BIOS and change it back to UEFI. I also need to unplug this physical Samsung updater USB drive that I made, which I did label, and just store it in case I buy some more someday, I suppose. So now I've updated two 960s, one from within Samsung Magician within Windows, and another through the ISO technique that is suitable for VMware and other operating system users who do not have the ability to run Samsung Magician on a consumer OS like Windows 10. So I'm glad I was able to successfully show that, including some glitches along the way that I'll probably just leave in the unedited video, or mostly unedited video, because often those little mishaps can help people in the future that might run into the same issues. So I'm hitting delete now to get in the BIOS. I'll say that I kind of have quiet mode boot off, where you don't see the Supermicro splash screen. Instead, you see some details about the CPU and the gigahertz and the speed of the memory DIMMs and so forth. That issue is being worked on, by the way, by Samsung. They should be recognized as 2400 speed DIMMs. All right, so the ISO is still installed, and it did not, it ignored my hitting the delete key to get in the BIOS. So I should pay attention to what I'm doing here and go to virtual media, CD-ROM. Nope, that's not where I'm mounted. It's physical, right? So you'll see there's nothing mounted remotely here. There is no media, but I should be physically removing the USB drive. Okay, so once I finish successfully getting into the BIOS, to go back to UEFI mode, I'm going to physically eject the USB drive. Now that last boot wouldn't have succeeded anyway, because had I popped up the USB drive and not set it back to UEFI mode, Windows 10, which was installed in that mode, would not come up. You get an error. So just pointing that out. And I might be having one of those HTML5 issues here where my keystrokes aren't always passed along to the remote system. They're a little less reliable than the server media. Okay. Yep. I'm going to close that down and cut back over to good old-fashioned console redirection care of Java, since I'm struggling to get keystrokes to be reliable in the HTML5 interface. And I'll be right back from popping out that USB drive. Okay, that's a weird one. I'm hitting the delete key and it won't let me get in. So this might be, I don't know, if I can't get in this next time, I might have to reboot the IPMI interface. It's just missing keystrokes, right? And I can't quite explain why. So this has happened to me once in a while where rebooting, I think it's, where is it here? iKVM reset might be necessary. The machine's in my house, so not a big deal for me to, physically walk up to it, or even plug in a USB keyboard, I suppose, and hit delete. But I've always been able to get out of this, just have to have the patience to do it. And I'm trying the easiest way first, and simply reboot and try again, because sometimes you'll get the keystroke on the next try again. All right, that was a little weird though, that I was hitting the delete key. It was echoing that it knew a keystroke was hit, but it wasn't registering that it was a delete key. So maybe something wonky is going on in this particular remote control session. No, soon. Delete, delete, delete right in the beginning. There you go, entering setup, shut up. So I'm back, everything will be fine. And we're gonna have Windows booting. Back to UEFI mode. Okay, you can see USB key is first, so if ESXi gets shoved back in, it's going to boot. And then hard disk second for Windows. F4 to save and exit. And the boot order save has now been changed. And it should be back to Windows soon. And the fact that it said UEFI Windows, it saw Windows, it's a good sign that even with all these reboots, like 4 or 5 of them that this ended up being, ouch, it was a good test to make sure that after the firmware, the drive no longer drops like it used to, the 960. And I did some benchmarking testing earlier with ATDO disk bench. So this will give me a good sense of before and after. Is there any degradation or improvement with this newer firmware from Samsung? Plus, this video shows whatever it arrived at factory defaults. I believe both my drives arrived the same day. One from Samsung USA Order Center, the other from Amazon. They were ordered in, October, November. Back ordered for a long time. Finally showed up December 22nd, I think it was. My blog post talks all about this. So there's real availability problems and obviously some firmware problems that took almost 2 months to square away. So I'm not going to hit any keys this time. I'm just going to let it boot. And Windows 10 Creators Update, just installed today, should come right up. I abruptly powered it off, so it's doing an automatic repair. That's normal. The NTFS file system was dirty because I yanked the power cord sloppily. Just a test build, no big deal. It's taking a little longer than I thought. Diagnosing. I don't know. Maybe because it says we saw a new C drive. That was a little weird. We're back in UEFI mode, so I wasn't really expecting all this. Huh. So I'm trying a startup repair. I'm not going to be waiting an hour. I doubt it's going to take that long, but especially on a really fast SSD. Not a spinning drive, but I don't know if I've just stumbled on something here where if you don't do it from Samsung Magician, do you end up with it looking like significantly different hardware, like the C drive is replaced and now Windows is doing stuff? Or is it because I didn't gracefully shut down this NVMe drive for the last time Windows was booted? I don't know. As long as Windows comes up, I'm good, but little disconcerting. Most people, if you have Windows, would want to just use Samsung Magician, of course, and not bother booting off of this ISO. What I also didn't test here was, like, if we had a VMFS file system on here, would all the files still be there? Well, I don't think I have video of it, but my last update where I booted over to Windows, updated with Magician, and then booted back to VMware, the VMware file system was fine. The files were there. But again, I don't have video of that. All right, this is taking a while. I guess I'll resume this video when there's something to show you. Okay, I'm back. The repair apparently went just fine. Why msconfig didn't work for auto login, not quite sure. And I should be able to RDP in at this point. Unless the IP address changed. So that abrupt power off looks like it turned off this. I turned that back on. Interesting. So you want to gracefully shut down after turning on a remote desktop. That's something I just learned. It's good to learn something every day, right? All right. So we're done with the local console. We're ready over RDP to, I don't know, let's see, to do your best benchmarking, actually. You don't want a local console, do you? You want to just use the equivalent of a VGA cable hooked up straight to the machine. So this gives me that look. And remember I said NetPLWiz went away? So if this machine has to do another reboot, have it auto log in. All right, so that's done. We can go a little higher resolution too here. Display settings, they've changed the way it looks if you haven't seen it yet. That's how it looks, and it's not letting me change the resolution. All right, that's fine. Benchmarking, oh, yeah, it would have been nice to have higher resolution for that. Interesting. Okay. Stuck at that resolution. All right, whatever. Let's get going. ATDO disk bench. Any difference after the new firmware? And now I don't even have Magician installed here, so it's going to be hard to show you, but I might be able to reveal what the firmware is on that SSD if we dig a little bit. Properties. Where's that? Okay. Details. Hardware ID. Sometimes we'll show you the firmware level. Nah. Not in this company's device. Darn. 16.6. I don't know. Nope. Guess not. NVMe driver. Is that installed? The Samsung one? No. We went back to the standard one. That is interesting. So, Yeah, it's weird. All right. So what happened here is that Windows rolled back. I didn't ask it to. I said, "Hey, repair my install," and it went and did like a rollback, and that killed off the video driver. It basically rewound me in time to when Windows was first installed. So it was a pretty big hit. Whatever happened there. Did Device Manager look all wonky with other elements too? Meaning system devices? Nope, they all show Xeon, so those are fine. The Readan Pro is fine. But the Ethernet 10 gigs went away, for instance, also. So it's just really weird and annoying. It's so much weird that I had to go through this. So here's the Intel Pro set. Let me get that back in there. So I'm going to get back to where I was. So when I do a quick little informal benchmark, everything's in exactly the same state. Okay. It's not what I expected. Let's see what's wrong here. Yeah, that's the drivers. Let's try that again. Copy. Right click. Update. Browse. Paste. Include subfolders. Could not find. Okay, so these last two Windows 10 updates were also reverted after that repair process. I'm going to go back and look at my own footage. I'm really curious. Did I accidentally give it permission for that? Not really sure, and this SM bus controller is a little weird too. I have a feeling this 10 gig driver will install just fine after a reboot, because that same subdirectory tree folder worked just fine earlier. Right there, including subfolders. And now it's not. Okay, let's see. Is it ready for me to reboot yet? Okay, I'm back up. Let's see if Device Manager looks clean other than 10 gig. And let's see if Task Manager seems to be busy doing any like housekeeping background, anything CPU. Nope. Okay, Ethernet controller, let's get those fixed. Huh. Okay, that's got me confused. So I don't know. Seems like the driver needs to be downloaded again or something. So there's files missing in the subdirectory tree. All right, well, get 10 gig going again. What was it? 238, yep. Should be in my recent history list for my, no. Huh. All right, I had another video that featured this where I right-click and 7-zip extract because Intel Pro Set doesn't install on the X552 chipset, but the driver does. So, yeah, and then you get a checksum error, but that's kind of expected. So I've seen that before. All right, so now we've got Pro WinX on this local machine. Copy to the clipboard. Now over RDP, let me paste that again and see what the heck is wrong with this one. curious if there's a difference in size between the two or something. Okay, can't do much with that Explorer instance while it's copying through RDP, but now it's done. All right, hover the mouse over that, and it says it. 22.3, 101, there you go. Okay, that rollback was a little goofy, but there we go. Okay, now we're clean. Storage adapter Samsung, system devices all Xeon instead of yellow bangs. Display adapter installed, disks and drive. It's all set. So another restart, and then I can do a little bit of informal benchmarking with ATTO dispatch to see if the firmware seems to have affected my speeds at all. I actually saved the file from ATTO dispatch, but with this rewind that happened, that's probably gone. I don't know. Let's see if my documents and settings, see if it left it there. So once I have Windows up, my plan is to run ATTO dispatch, see if the performance changed. And then I think I'm done. I showed off how to install from ISO in a pinch. And I showed how to work around UEFI versus old legacy BIOS settings for the boot media that that Samsung has you create for this firmware update utility. Okay, rather fast, as expected. And what's the verdict on ATTO dispatch? Wow. Okay, so we have folders, but not, okay. So yeah, the rewind continues to bite me a bit. Well, we do have the file name, but not the executable. So that's just no problem. We get it back again. And we can open the one from earlier, and I can run a whole second instance of it so we can see the results. All right. Performance or power profile setting. Let's see what we're at. We're at the balanced default one. I believe that's where I ran it earlier, but I'll need to double check that. I really just want to know if it's in the right ballpark, if we got similar speeds to what you see on the left. If we do, say within 5% or something, I'm not particularly worried about if the firmware affected my speed. I was much more interested in getting rid of the problem where the drive would just abruptly disappear. Now, while the benchmark was running, unfortunately a little interruption did pop up. And that was OneDrive. So earlier in one of my videos, I said, yeah, you might want to exit that so you don't get goofy stuff trying to happen in the background while you're doing things like this. And I also have you get rid of the workspace ink if you're not using it. So far the numbers look decent, but maybe a little slower. I'm not sure if those differences are significant. They are slower. At least at 1, 2, 4, and 8. First number was a little higher. And now the numbers are bumping up a little bit. All right, that's done. Here's the old firmware. Here's the new firmware. Default power profile over RDP. Okay. So we got 2 runs down. I want to do a 3rd run with the local user interface. Not that RDP uses much of anything, but let's just virtually hook up a local VGA cable and stick with that. Okay, and then power profile. I'm making 2 changes at once. I know, again, I'm really just trying to move forward, make sure I'm done with this firmware update and I didn't have any surprise effects. It's not intended to be some sort of perfect benchmarking. All right, so the cloud thing's been killed. Task manager's closed. Everything's closed. It's not needed. Other than dormant copies of ATDO Diskbench, which do absolutely nothing to the CPU. They're just there for rendering the graph, basically. And you can see the CPU is all set and happy. All right, here we go. 3rd run. This is going to be... Okay, now I'm going to bring up RDP, so we have a little more elbow room to show off those results. And it's always annoying how RDP windows size like that, but all right. And wow, significantly faster here. Was that the power profile or was that RDP? Well, let's do nothing other than change over to RDP, and I suspect we're going to get the same exact answer. Either way, the firmware updates behind me, the reports seem to be good from people commenting on my site as far as disappearance problems going away after the firmware update on the EVO, and the 960 Pro users also got a firmware update from Samsung with a different version number, but it seems to fix their disappearance problems. So things are looking up for the Samsung 960 EVO and Pro line, with a rough first 2 months until the firmware updates came out, and I think it was a 3 or 4 month wait actually for the Pro users to wait. But either way, we're in good shape now as of April 2017. And looks like on this 2nd run, the numbers dipped slightly. That's not thermal throttling. Thermal throttling, you lose like 25%. I don't know. So I doubt that's going anything there. And actually, the fans cranked to high to make that less likely anyway. So I'm done here. If anything, the performance increased after the upgrade. And more important, they're no longer disappearing. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Let me let this run finish here before I finish up. Okay, so that finished up. So we got the old firmware here. We line up the rests right across so you can see them all. So, power profile has an impact. So yeah. And going from the old firmware, maybe no impact at all, because the old firmware test that I ran was probably at the default power profile. Maybe it was a little faster at the 1 size, 1.0. But anyhow, interesting. Well, that's it. I am done. I'm going to shut down. I'm probably going to put ESXi USB key back in there, boot it up, and reformat this 960 Pro, 960 EVO, now that it's been firmware updated and is ready to go for my day-to-day work with VMware stuff. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and thanks for visiting tinkertry.com, where if you like the video, hit thumbs up, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, or subscribe to the weekly newsletter here with your email address right in the front of the main page or all pages on Tinkertry. So thanks again for watching. Bye now.